all set up that we're going to be able to record and put this on the California PBIS website. And that's down there on the bottom, www.pbisca.org. That takes you directly to the CPC website. So remember, we're recording. Careful with what you look like and what you say and do. All right, we're going to take a look at our objectives. I have to remind myself of that because I'm not seeing my picture. And so I'm not going to be reminded that maybe somebody can see me. The objectives for today, we are going to really talk about the PBIS guiding principles and how we apply them to our new normal, to what's going on for us today. We're going to also take a look at, have an overview of those PBIS evidence-based prevention practices. We're all about prevention these days. I think this pandemic is helping us realize how important it is that we work on prevention and not just reacting to problem behaviors. We're going to really focus on two of those, and that's specific behavior praise as part of your acknowledgement system. We're going to talk about why we need to do it that way, how we do it, and then take a look at that through the trauma lens, because a lot of our kids, let's not forget, this is a very traumatic event for them. And we're going to make use of the breakout rooms today. We did it on Monday. We didn't allow enough time. People liked it. We were only in there for 8 minutes. We're going to be in there for 15 minutes. So that's part of why we're going to talk pretty fast today. We're also going to be looking at engagement systems. Again, the why we want to use them. What do we get out of doing that? How do we do that in an effective way? And how it helps those kids that are being traumatized. And again, we're going to use the chat room. I don't believe we're going to breakout rooms a second time. I think we're using the chat room. It depends on our time.
Our behavioral expectations today are to be responsible, be safe, and be respectful. Those are the three basic ones that I'm sure we're all familiar with. What we want to look at, just to remind each other, to be respectful, we want to use the chat box to answer questions, to clarify, to ask clarifying questions, and to keep ourselves muted. So we've already talked about that, but to be safe, we want to continue to use that safe at home protocol. And everybody knows what that is, and use physical distancing. And when we had typed that word physical distancing, and when we said it on Monday, when we went over these expectations, I got all stressed out because just that word physical distancing just brings up all sorts of uncomfortable feelings for me. So we want to make sure that we increase our social emotional connections during this webinar. I think it's a great opportunity for us all to connect. I know we're close to 200 people now, and I think that we can all connect. We're all part of a PBIS community. So when we get to the breakout, Zoom breakouts, we'll talk about routines, and we want everyone to be responsible to know what those routine behaviors will be.
Yes, we are. We're at a little over 191, I think it is, 192. Cristy, you want to go on with our mantra?
I do. So we have 4 mantras for this new normal, this PBIS virtual classroom, or whatever new kind of classroom you're engaging your students with. The first one is to try to use what you've already been using. So keep it familiar. Mrs. Lamb, she was a math teacher. And so every morning she'd have a math prompt on the board. So she just contextualized, not really, but for the fun of it. If Mrs. Lamb uses 258 rolls of toilet paper in 2 weeks, how many will she use before this is all over? We don't know that answer, do we? And the next mantra, oh, I'm sorry, try to use what you already do. Keep it clear and simple. Well, that reminds me of Alexa. So how many of you are trying to give Alexa directions, right? She only gets it if we're clear and simple. So she's a great teacher for me and a reminder to keep my directions or my content for her clear and simple. And if we want to ask her to write our own distance learning plans, she can do that for us too. We just have to ask her in a clear and simple way. Our next mantra for you is do the best you can right now while planning to meet the needs of every student. So this particular teacher does themed curriculum. So you know we all have themes going on. She just brought that to real life and wanted to engage all different students in her at the beach theme. So there's a picture of her. She's doing her best. And then finally, with this mantra, just remember it's about relationship building, connecting with our kids right now, feeling that there's a sense of community. And we want to make sure that we take care of ourselves while we are taking care of our kids as well. So we're just seeing this particular educator connecting with every day with individually with kids, you know, via email. And of course, he's taking care of himself. He's very comfortable and he is having morning caffeine. So.
Okay, thank you very much for those, Cristy. And could we ask everybody to make sure that they mute themselves? There's close to 190 of us on here, and we're going to need to all be muted except for who's actually talking. So we're going to talk about those guiding principles that we have with PBIS. We know them as predictability, flexibility, making sure we're having those connections and relationships and empowerment. And we really want to see the need for doing that during this time, during this pandemic. The predictability will really help us with making sure that we're having safe and predictable and positive environments with our kids. It's really important that we do this. The new normal is very different for many of our kids now. The predictability we offered in our classrooms are not there at home. So how can we make sure that we are staying very predictable and building those routines even on our webinars, even when we're talking with kids during our distance learning? We want to maintain flexibility, however, while we're doing that, because a lot of our kids are experiencing this as a pretty traumatic event. And when we get to where we're involved in any kind of power struggles, that then will heighten some of these intense feelings kids are having. So while we want to be predictable, we also want to be flexible, work with the kids in building the routines that we have and that we think are important. And then during this time, we've got to make sure we're staying with those connections. It's really almost more important than anything else that we're doing right now. Not that if we don't keep doing this, we're going to be needing to make sure we're paying attention pretty rigidly to the academics. Right now, we need to help with the connections and with the relationships, because they've had their relationships disrupted, not just the ones between you and your students, but their ones at home, the ones with their friends. So how can we help them make connections? And we're going to have some ideas on that. Again, we also talked about it on Monday. And then the empowerment piece is that we really want to help the kids be part of the decision-making process that we're doing with them. Let's empower them and give them some strategies for how to do decision-making, how to have really authentic choice in the work that we are doing with them. We want to make sure that we're building kind of real life lessons for them, not a good time for worksheets, but what can they do, like measuring the amount of toilet paper they might be using. So it is their math, but it relates to what's happening for them right now. Cristy, are you muted?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
That's great. I just, can you click the button for a minute, Barb?
Which way? Forward?
That was a little teaser, your little comic. There's something underneath that comic strip, I believe. The comic. Just, can you? Oh, okay. Go the other way. I guess it doesn't come out. I'll read a quote then because you can't see it. Go back to that slide, please. Thank you so much. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. George Sagai. And he says, the key to successful classroom management is prevention of problems before they start. And so this comic just illustrates what he says, that not knowing how to deal with problems after they've begun. That's the issue. So we don't want to always be reactive in a classroom. So this classroom is too far gone, as you can see. So it's been up here long enough for you guys to kind of be reading some of the like outrageous scenarios that might be going on. This particular visual for me, I relate to, because I think I'm the teacher in the upper right-hand corner right there, because all I'm really doing is planning for my retirement. And I can't deal with anything. It's just so overwhelming right now. But that we really just want to go back to what's the importance of our classroom PBIS evidence-based practices. So we're going to show you a document from the California I'm sorry, there's so many technical assistance centers, but this is the national PBIS Technical Assistance Center. And you can download this document. There's a link here, supporting and responding to behavior. So these are evidence-based strategies for classroom teachers. And it's really organized in a doable manner of understanding. So there are 3 areas that we consider, and we really are sequential in considering these practices. And we first always look at our foundations. So how we set up our physical environment, the expectations that align with our school-wide expectations should be evident in our routines and procedures that we have in our own personal classroom. So we talked a little about that on Monday, a lot about that on Monday. And we really wanted to say, how do we move that into the virtual classroom? Barb, can you go back? I wanted to finish the last 2.
That's it.
Thank you. And so prevention practices is the next sequential category that we want to look at. And that's what we're focusing on today. Supervision, opportunities, acknowledgement, prompts, and pre-corrects. Today, we're going to really highlight opportunities of engagement and our acknowledgement and behavior-specific praise. And then the final outline for looking at our practices is then our response practices. So if all these are in place, our foundations and prevention practices will less likely be dealing with those consistent, frequent problem behaviors. The response practices really are a continuum, and we focus on specific error correction as we build resiliency in kids so that they can always come back to being appropriate and engaged in learning in their academics. So when we talk about prevention practices, I mentioned what those 4 are, just a brief description of what they are. When we talk about active supervision, we're talking about the proximity that we're there to be connecting with kids. So we're always scanning and moving. Acknowledgement, we're talking about the use of behavior-specific praise, and here's another acronym you guys are all going to love, so that's the BSP. Prompts and pre-corrects are really reminders of how to set students up for success, and opportunities for engagement is our ability as a teacher to provide high rates of varied opportunities to respond for our kids, be differentiated for all kids. So Barb, why don't you move into talking about acknowledgement?
Okay. So hold on 1 second here. I got to do a little math. Okay. So on the acknowledgement system, we're really going to be talking about that behavior-specific praise. It's not a behavior-specific plan or behavior support plan. It's behavior-specific praise when you're in your acknowledgement system, with the idea that whatever you feed will grow. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to what we're seeing and what we want to keep seeing when we're talking about behavior-specific praise. So it's a name that really talks about how we are going to be explicit in our statements about what it is that we're seeing students do and showing approval for that. It is directed toward an individual, or you can even use that with a group of students. You just have to be specific about what the behavior is that you're seeing. You need to make sure that you say it in understandable terms, maybe not teacher talk, but age-appropriate talk. You would say it different in high school than you would in elementary. High school kids, adults, as Cristy mentioned, her husband, we all need this in order to maintain the behaviors that we would like to see. You want to try to get to that idea where you're reaching a 5-to-1 ratio with your positive statements. And you want to consider the characteristics of what it is that you're using, who you're working with when you're giving that type of behavior-specific praise. So let's talk about why we want to use behavior-specific praise instead of a generic praise, instead of saying good boy or good girl. What's the importance of having behavior-specific praise? And really, it's when we want to build and sustain a new behavior or a behavior that we would like to see, that generic praise won't do that. We have to make sure that we're doing behavior-specific praise, because that's going to increase the likelihood that we're going to see that behavior again. It's going to help build and sustain the behaviors that we would like to see. And it will help to have the student understand it was what they did that got the acknowledgement, not because you like them, but because of what they did. So they get to own their own behavior. Now, how you do that is that you want to make sure that you just simply describe exactly what it was that you saw. So we've all been practicing with building our matrices, our classroom matrices and our school-wide matrices with operationalizing behavior. What would you see and what you would hear? So we have practice now at being able to describe exactly what the behavior is. We also want to try to get to that 5-to-1 ratio, particularly if we're trying to build a new skill. We want to try to make sure that for every corrective comment we need to make, we can give 5 behavior-specific praises. And those can be generally to the group, or they can be to an individual student. We also want to be really cautious about not adding that "I'm proud of you." Not that that's a bad thing to say. I don't want to say don't do that. But in addition to, make sure that you're talking about what the behavior is and why what the student got out of it. What was the benefit for them in doing that behavior? So again, they learn that it's for themselves, and we're building that internal motivation for that behavior instead of externally just wanting to do that in order to please the adults that are in the room. Remember that when behavior requires a great deal of effort, it's a new behavior or it's the exact opposite behavior of what a student has learned how to do in the past, you may have to pair that with some tangible types of reinforcements in order to bring a little bit more strength to what it is that you're doing. So there's a tremendous amount of impact when you're using behavior-specific praise. When we take a look at that through the lens of trauma, so the kids that are coming to us that have trauma already in their homes or the trauma that's being caused because of this COVID experience that we're all having, we can notice that when we do these behavior-specific praise, it's really a pre-correction practice to what it is that we want to see kids do. So not only is it helping on the back end with acknowledgement, but we're setting it up as a pre-correct. It's a powerful tool for building a kid's self-esteem and a positive sense of themselves. It's also recommended that you give that ratio. We already talked about that, increasing that ratio when you're trying to do error corrections with students. It adds to your relationship. It really gives you a strategy for building relationship with your students. We talked about that's important. Your acknowledgement system and how you give behavior-specific praise will definitely relate to that and help you build those relationships. So we're going to spend some time in the chat room, and I'm going to set up a chat room of about 6 people per chat room. And when you get into the chat room, if you haven't been there already and you haven't done this before, you're going to want to unmute yourself. You're also going to want to open up your camera so that you can see each other. We'll do this for about, as I said, about 6 people in every room. And I'm doing the math on that right really quickly so I can figure out how many rooms I need to create. These are going to be your 2 questions. You might want to write them down. How are you using behavior-specific praise in your current teaching environment? So environment that you have now, your online environment, how are you using that? And how do you see yourself possibly using that Behavior Plus app, that reminder app that it's time for you to be able to give any behavior-specific praise?
If you've already downloaded it, you techie people view, you could be looking at that too. for the section of all the specific praise reminders and counters, and then how you can record your statistics looking at the ratio of positive praise to corrections. It's
So
kind of a cool.
you're going to have about 15 minutes in your chat room. When we get to minute 14, be looking for this. I'm going to send a message that says you have 1 more minute to finish up your conversation, and we'll come back. As we finish up our conversation, would everybody hit the chat room and write down some great point that you just learned, some really important point that you just learned while you were in your chat room, so that, again, we can capture what was happening across, because we're going to have about 32 different rooms happening. And so it might be important that maybe one person assigns himself the role of facilitator, experience the chat room, and see what are some of the things, are the breakout rooms, see what some of the things are that you might need to teach your students if you're going to use the breakout room. So I'm going to set them up now. Cristy or Patty, do you have anything else you want to say before I move to that?
Yes, Patty has written what the questions are in the chat box. So as another reminder of what the questions are to talk about.
Okay, here we go. And then again, you'll have about 15 minutes once I get you in there. Once you've been invited, be sure to join.
Hey, Barbara.
Yes.
If you can hear me.
I
Hi,
can.
it's Molly. No one was in my breakout room but me.
Okay, where are you? Who is it?
Pardon me?
Who am I talking to right now?
This is Molly Stitt from CBE.
Okay, Molly, let me find you and I'll move you. I think I can do that.
Thanks. Yeah, there was just one person. It was only me, so it's kind of boring.
Yeah, let me find a place. I'm trying to find you.
What breakout room number were you in?
You're in 16. Okay. Molly Stitt, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I think Chanel's supposed to be in there too, but I'll move you. Oops, you keep moving on me. Okay, I'm gonna move you to. Okay, I'm moving you to 17.
Okay, I'll give that a try. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
I didn't get an invite, Barbara. Am I supposed to go to join a breakout room and pick one? Or am I waiting for an invite?
Why don't you, I thought I sent you an invite, so try going and join 17.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
You want to follow me there, Chanel?
There they go. Why will they close? No, 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 no. Don't stop the breakout room. I don't want it to close. And 9, I don't want them to close. No, 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 no. Breakout, breakout. Breakout rooms.
It's okay, Barbara. It's technology. We understand. Don't get mad at
Oh my
yourself.
God, they all just closed.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay,
You'll
Barb.
figure it
We're
out.
okay.
I'm not
We thought
freaking
that 14 minutes was really short.
I know, right?
out. Okay, I'm hitting open all rooms again. Let's see what happens.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, sorry if I didn't start sooner to talk. It's just I'm also in another Zoom meeting with my assistant principal and a team they put together just half an hour ago. So I'm trying to do both. So I'm sorry, I apologize if I'm supposed to be in this breakout and discussing.
Who is this? And I'll see if I can open you up in a place.
Just Richard Cotto, I'm a school psychologist with LACO, LA County Office of Ed.
Okay, Richard, hold on a minute. Okay, I believe all of the rooms have closed and you're rejoining the webinar. If you could take a few minutes now and everybody post something from your conversation about the chat that you just had.
Yes. So please use the chat box so we can learn from each other. Any strategies or anything innovative that you've seen or used for behavior-specific praise. And then any ideas about that cool Be Positive app. We're going to take just a few minutes and then we're going to move into our next evidence-based practice for prevention, and that's opportunities and engagement.
Wow, how cool. I'm getting to see everybody for a moment. Go out of the video in order to make it work, or the PowerPoint in order to make it work, and this is pretty cool. Hi all, everybody. Okay, now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and not seeing everyone.
Because we're seeing that too.
Yeah, it's cool.
It is. So once again, those ideas are going to be put in a document, all those strategies. This is our little mini community of practice for PBIS. So look for that in that resource link that we keep showing you. But give us a couple days because we're going to have to disaggregate strategies from other topics. Yeah.
Okay, so back on target. We're a little bit like 3 minutes behind, so we're not going to talk about the student teacher game, but you'll see the link on this slide. So the PowerPoint will be uploaded by the end of today, and you'll have access to that link, but it's on the PBIS.org in their resources. It's called the student teacher game. It's a fun way to plot ourselves against the kids and see how well we do at being able to give behavior specific praise. So it's a game way to work into that.
And before I leave, I love the idea too that it involves both teacher and student, where students are looking for our behavior as an adult and how often we give behavior specific praise. So we're going to move into opportunities and engagement. And my favorite quote is from Benjamin Franklin. And he says, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. But involve me and I learn." And I think that that just sums it up for engagement. How do we involve our kids so that they want to be connected with us, especially now in this virtual learning world that we're in? So how do we connect? So opportunities for engagement. Engagement is really looking at our behavior as a teacher and how we request or solicit a student's response. And that can happen through individual times with kids or small group questioning. We can do that through any kind of choral response or any of those silent signals or nonverbal responses. So I think we're all pretty familiar with those things. We've kind of modeled the idea individually. We can do that in our chat boxes, and in small groups, we just went into the Zoom breakout rooms. So that's one way that we can engage. The opportunities can be provided actually in this particular Zoom. If you are using the Zoom platform, there's a icon on the bottom that says reactions. And if you click on reactions, you do that now, you'll see a hand. One's an applause and one's a thumbs up. And if you click on one of those, like I'm going to do a thumbs up, it would show on my screen just for a few minutes. There's another way to engage through silent signals or nonverbal responses, and that's if you go down to participants. And right now I see that there's 144 participants. And at the bottom of that, when I click on, it says raise hand. So for me, Cristy Clouse, I raised my hand. Did you guys all raise your hand? That's so cool. Some of you raised your hand, and then they're going to lower my hand and all sorts of things. So that's just for this particular platform. I know that Google, if some of you are using Google, I'm not sure if they have that as well. But the why, so why do we want to engage our students? So with the research, we know that if we increase engagement, we're most likely to reduce our problem behaviors in the classroom and our academic instruction rises. We want to make sure that we increase our rate of engagement, and we only do that by offering more opportunities to respond. Opportunities to respond really work with all kids, so we can differentiate and we can vary the types of responses that we can get with kids. And remember that mantra, how are we going to do what we've been doing and be able to address all needs of students? So we're really just thinking about how are we engaging all of our kids in different modalities and ways. We want to make learning visual, and that is why we talk about engagement. If we engage our kids, then we can really see how often we give specific praise, how often we do correction, and look at that ratio. And we can use our new Be Positive app to be able to look visually at our time of engagement. There's a specific area that prompts you that you can count for engagement. So we all know how to engage our kids. That's our job, right? That's what we've been doing. So could everybody write in your chat box while I'm talking some things how you engage kids? Could be through response cards, the dry erase boards, those response clickers, how you get choral or all responding at the same time, those think, pair, share opportunities, embedding polls like Kahoots or other things where kids can put their voice and see it visually. And then we talked about those silent signals. Those are just some examples. So just, it's kind of cool to know what you guys are doing to engage all of your kids, because we want to be able to differentiate, like we said. The important thing to remember is that when we think of opportunities for engagement through the trauma lens, engagement provides this process for our kids to apply what they learned. If they're involved, they're going to think about what it is. We give them time, wait time to process, and we get to strengthen their neural connections. And that's super important. So we want to make those patterns happen for our kids. We can go through small group projects with kids, having them engage together, and we can work on building those relationships between peer-to-peer right now, which is what they need. They could do that by phone or by online kinds of activities. Maybe I heard on Monday, teachers doing scavenger hunts, I thought was really cool with groups. The key is to really help our kids feel connected to each other, give them that sense of community. We want to empower our kids right now too, because they're really feeling this loss of power, right, with what's happening. And we want them to be their own decision makers. So how do we engage them to make decisions? And how do we provide them with authentic choice? The power of choice is amazing. So when kids get to choose how they want to do it, where they want to do it, when they want to do it, guided by you, of course. So I think we're good, Barb.
Okay, I think you covered a lot of these. So again, you didn't have to worry about taking voracious notes because it's all going to be in your handouts.
Right. There is a video that came out of Utopia that talked about keeping students engaged in virtual settings. So you're welcome to listen to the video and leave right now or listen to me. No, I'm just kidding, because we're not going to show the video because we did not want to deal with technology with our Zoom right now. But there are 6 tips, and it's really going to reinforce what we've already heard and what you already are doing. So the first tip is just to keep it simple and engaging. So let's not make it complicated. So that's why we didn't put the video on there. We just want to make sure that it's easier if you create things sometimes than going to get something else that somebody has done. So when you have an ownership of creating it yourself, it'll be a lot easier. And truly be your authentic self. That's what keeps it simple. Talk from the heart, and your kids will be able to respond so much easier than if we're really scripted out in what we have to say and do. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, like Barb and I. We're learning, and kids will see that vulnerability and appreciate it more, and it lets your personality shine through. For the next tip, it's to make your space clean and comfy. And this actually goes back to that foundation practice about the setting and looking at your learning environment. So make sure that kids know what they do in this virtual world, where to go to a central hub to find updated materials, make sure that you've taught them the routines of how to navigate through that space. And then if you have opportunities for chat rooms or side conversations or just connecting individually with kids, let them know where that is. Tip 3 is to set norms. And again, on Monday, we talked about how do we have our school-wide expectations be part of our new classroom expectations, and how do we create routines for each one of those expectations. So being respectful, being safe, and being responsible were ours. And when you went into the Zoom room, breakout room, Barb went through what those expectations were. Our kids will appreciate that. It'll be less chaotic for them when they move into those environments. And fostering belonging, I can't say enough about that. Again, our kids are needing this sense of community, this sense of feeling safe and secure. And I want a room that I can go to that's virtual, it's predictable, and I know that those people will be there. So make those small groups relationship building time for our kids. And it's hard when we're seeing pictures, but try to connect what we say, the text, with the actual person behind that text as well. Step 5 is to really be present, but not intrusive. So again, letting kids empower themselves, give them opportunities to go and do something independently, but always checking in with them to make sure to give them feedback and use your specific behavior praise with that. And the last tip is to plan for interactivity. So we just don't want our kids to become passive observers when we're doing any kind of virtual learning. So let's engage with materials that we have, with the way we group our kids. Again, you guys know how to do it because you put it in the chat box. You know, find ways to poll kids or break for brainstorming, drop in guided questions, have them do those silent reactions of thumbs up or applauding. So you can find more at that website that's there. I didn't put it in the link. Maybe Patty could put that in the link for the chat box for you to get to a lot easier. But we want to end there with engagement.
So one of the things that we have for you, and it's in your handout, it's a student success formula reflection guide. So it's a reflection guide about your whole acknowledgement system and building those opportunities to respond and those prevention practices. I'm not going to go through that now. You have it as a handout, so you're invited to use that. Check yourself at how well you're doing with meeting those evidence-based practices for acknowledgement and for engagement. We want to bring it to an end today. We have a link for evaluations, and it's in the chat room, I believe, as well, so that you can click on it from the chat. You can click on it when you get the PowerPoint. We really do want you to take a few minutes and complete it. It's pretty quick, but the final question is really important. It's the one about what do you want next? What would you really like? Because we're going to continue these through May, and it will help our Technical Assistance Center come up with something that we really think will be valuable for everybody from your perspective of what it is that you need. We know that we heard some from on Monday about needing some specific help with the technology piece. So make sure you write and get to that final question.
And then on April 24th, there will be a webinar that will talk about the updates to the California PBIS recognition system. So please, if you are interested in what those updates are, please attend that webinar on April 24th. And I'm hoping I get that date right, but I think it's April 24th, because we're doing things a little differently this year based on the COVID-19 situation. Right. And so what we are really doing is inviting everyone to be part of the California PBIS Community Cares and to submit their story about what they're doing that is showing their commitment to supporting our kids, our family, our community during this time. So you'll see a link there and you'll get a lot more information. The date, I believe, is by June 30th, 2020, that you would submit something to be recognized as part of this group of California PBIS Community Cares.
In closing, we also want to make sure that everyone's aware that we are still on for the California PBIS Conference. It is September 21st through the 22nd for the general conference. The 23rd is where you can sign up for some post-conference trainings, not just conference sessions. On the slide again, you can just click on the submit proposals here, but there's also the link. And so we are really interested in getting proposals from exemplar sites across California. At our conferences, people really want to know what's happening here and what's working well, as well as the research and hearing from the national experts in this area. So again, we're still on, and the proposals, they are due by May 29th. We'll keep you posted as things change. Here's some of those upcoming events, and Cristy talked about the one about the recognition system, and yes, it is April 24th. We're going to continue with the same logic as we move into the social-emotional world and the virtual classroom. That's on the 22nd. And the 29th, we're going to be talking about those social-emotional behavior skills at home. Be sure to take a look at all of these and sign up for the ones you're interested in. They are Pacific Daylight Time. and they are not all in response to online learning. So be sure to take a look at the titles. You've got an array of things to attend. So again, we want to thank you from the California PBIS Coalition. In short, that's the CPC. There's our website if you want more technical assistance. There's also making sure you hold the date for our conference. We want to give a special thanks to Stephanie Tagg at the Santa Clara County Office of Ed. It was really her vision that launched this series of webinars. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
And Barb and I would love to thank you during this time of transition. And Barb, can you click on a butterfly for me?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there's one coming up.
There. So we just want you to know that we understand this is a transitional period for us all. We appreciate all the work that you're doing for our kids, for our families, and our community. And we can't thank that enough. Thank you enough. And we're grateful for everything you're doing.
I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other for a moment as we say goodbye. We could click on that reactions and clap. And wave goodbye.
How do you find the app in the App Store? I haven't been able to find it.
Yes, it should be in the.
What do you do? What do you put in for a search?
Mine from iPhone for the Apple Store or Google.
From the Apple Store, I put in "be positive" in the App Store, and it didn't come up.
Use the word positive instead of the sign. So BE space and then the word positive. You'll find it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and we need to stop recording now, Barb.
I know. I just got that note. I have to find out where it is.
Thank you, everyone.